This rift between the East and the West is actually made bigger by a so-called US-NATO nuclear sharing resolution. It says at the time that the treaty was being negotiated, NATO had in place a secret nuclear weapons sharing agreement whereby the United States provided nuclear weapons to be deployed by and stored in other NATO states. But some argue this is an act of proliferation, violating Articles 1 and 2 of the treaty. A counter-argument is that the US controlled the weapons in storage within the NATO states and that no transfer of the weapons or control over them was intended unless and until a decision were made to go to war, at which the treaty would no longer be controlling. So there is no breach of the NPT. These arguments were disclosed to a few of the states, including the Soviet Union, negotiating the treaty. But most of the states that signed the NPT in 1968 would not have known about these agreements and interpretations at that time. So we see that there is an argument from the United States of America and NATO's side saying that they had an agreement before the treaty was ever made to share nuclear weapons. The question we should ask then is, why was this never disclosed when the treaty was signed? It remained a secret agreement that no one else knew about, for the advantage of both the US and NATO, and also to the angering of the other non-nuclear nation states. We can easily see how this has caused a great anger because of the deceitfulness with which this treaty was signed. As of 2005, it is estimated that the United States still provides about 180 tactical B-61 nuclear bombs for use by Belgium, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, and Turkey, and under these NATO agreements. So we can see that a B-61 nuclear bomb, which we will look at a little bit later, is actually able to be carried by aeroplanes. And we see that the United States has been providing these tactical nuclear bombs to different nations in the European Union and other so-called NATO states like Turkey, even up until 2005. So we wonder, is the treaty at all causing the nuclear bombs to be spread when America themselves are actually sending these nuclear bombs all over Europe? Many states and the non-aligned movement now argue this violation of Articles 1 and 2 of the treaty and are applying diplomatic pressure to terminate these agreements. They point out that the pilots and other staff of the non-nuclear NATO states practice and handling and delivering the US nuclear bombs, and non-US warplanes have been adapted to deliver US nuclear bombs, which must have involved the transfer of some technical nuclear weapons information. NATO believes its nuclear forces continue to play an essential role in war prevention, but their role is now more fundamentally political. NATO officials also point out that no nuclear weapons have ever been given over to non-US control by the United States. So therefore, there cannot have been a violation of Article 1, which prohibits transferring nuclear weapons or other nuclear explosive devices or control over such weapons or explosive devices, or Article 2, which bars the receiving of, the transfer from, and the transferer whatsoever of nuclear weapons or other nuclear explosive devices, or of control over such weapons or explosive devices. We can see that the other states argue that there has been a violation of the treaty, whereas NATO argue that having nuclear bombs in the European Union and in Europe have prevented wars up until now. We see that the argument is that in order for these bombs to be given over to other nations for use, or not use, for storage, actually involves the changing or the adaptation of planes to carry these bombs, because they are quite large. And we will now, in the next part of the seminar, start seeing how the prophets of old have actually seen what we are speaking about right now, and how this will cause World War III. In the next part of this explanation of the members and the UN Security Council members, we just want to look at a little bit of history of each of the nations and their involvement and their capability and what they have done in terms of nuclear weapons. There has been a race, just like there had been a space race for the first nation to reach the moon. There has also been a race for a nation to be able to reach nuclear capability. The reason for this is it would be known as a superpower, or a power to be reckoned with. Therefore, each of the nations of the world that have pursued nuclear weapons have not only pursued it for the reason of making a war, but actually have pursued it for their own guarantee and safety, to say that, watch out, we are a nation to be reckoned with. But Yahweh, the creator of heaven and earth, knows that there are far more than that behind these agreements. As we have seen earlier, three states, India, Israel and Pakistan, have declined to sign the treaty. India and Pakistan are confirmed nuclear powers, and Israel has a long-standing policy of deliberate ambiguity. And see a list of countries with nuclear weapons if you press on this link. These countries argue that the NPT creates a club of nuclear haves and a larger group of nuclear have-nots by restricting the legal possession of nuclear weapons to those states that tested them before 1967. But the treaty never explains on what ethical grounds such a distinction is valid. India and Pakistan have publicly announced possession of nuclear weapons and have detonated nuclear devices in tests. India having first done so in 1974 and Pakistan following suit in 1998 in response to another Indian test. India is estimated to have enough fissile material for more than 150 warheads. Pakistan reportedly has between 180 and 120 warheads, according to the former head of its Strategic Arms Division. So we can see that these three states have actually do have nuclear weapons. India and Pakistan saying that they have nuclear weapons in order to protect themselves against those around them. India against Pakistan and Pakistan against India. We will also see that India also said the same thing about China. It's also very important, in order to understand prophecy, to see how Israel fit into the picture. We see that Israel has a policy of deliberately giving ambiguous amounts whether they have nuclear powers or not. And this has been a great concern to the rest of the permanent members of the UN Security Council. And this will also cause Israel to become a threat to the rest of the UN Security Council and the United Nations. India is one of the few countries to have a no first use policy, a pledge not to use nuclear weapons unless first attacked by an adversary using nuclear weapons. The main reason India cites for not signing the NPT and for possessing nuclear weapons is that China is one of the nuclear haves. India's External Affairs Minister Pranab Mukherjee said during a visit to Tokyo in 2007, if India did not sign the NPT, it's not because of its lack of commitment to non-proliferation, but because we consider NPT as a flawed treaty and did not recognize the need for universal, non-discriminatory verifications and treatment. And this is a very important point that India is actually making. We can see how the so-called haves of the world, or would we rather say those who want to control the world, want to make use of the threat of nuclear weapons to unite the world. And in order for all the nations to sign one single treaty so that all would work together. But India actually saw right through this and said, why should we be part of this? We can understand from a logical point of view that a nuclear weapon is a very powerful weapon and can destroy all the other nations of the world. But a treaty signed so that all would be part of it is actually trying to bring all of them together under one banner, as we have seen. India's real reason for not signing the treaty, they said, is because China and India have a long-standing border dispute, and China being one of the permanent members of the UN Security Council. But according to leaked intelligence, Israel has been developing nuclear weapons at its Dimona site in the Negev since 1958. And many non-proliferation analysts like David Albright estimate that Israel may have stockpiled between 100 to 200 warheads using the plutonium repossessed from Dimona. The Israeli government refuses to confirm or deny possession of nuclear weapons, although this is now regarded as an open secret after Israeli low-level nuclear technician Mordechai Vanunu, later abducted and jailed by Israel, revealed the program to the British Sunday Times in 1986. So we can see that Israel has been developing nuclear weapons for the last 50 years and have stockpiled, according to estimates, probably about 200 warheads. Therefore, they are a force to be reckoned with. And we will see how this will anger not only the leaders of the world, but also Satan, who wants to destroy them and wipe them off the map, as many have said. Even Iran, as well as the Hamas and the Hezbollah, all of these nations have made at some point the statement that they want to wipe Israel off the face of the earth. In early March 2006, India and the United States finalized a deal having critics in both countries to provide India with US civilian nuclear technology. Under the deal, India has committed to classify 14 of its 22 nuclear power plants as being for civilian use and to place them under IAEA safeguards. Muhammad al-Bardai, the General of the IAEA, welcomed the deal by calling India an important partner in the non-proliferation regime. We see that America are now actually distributing nuclear weapons to a non-nuclear state, India, working with them, converting some of their nuclear power plants to have the ability to create nuclear bombs. As a matter of fact, out of the 22, 14 of them were only for civilian use. That leaves us with another 8 power plants that have the capability of producing nuclear weapons. Thus, we can see that by either the research of India themselves, or because of America's help, India has become a force to be reckoned with. And we will see in the rest of the seminar how YHWH had revealed that India will be one of those nations that will become a great problem in the last days to the Illuminati and to those who want to rule the world. When we come to the country of North Korea, North Korea has been a big problem to the Non-Proliferation Treaty. It says North Korea ratified the treaty on December the 12th, 1985, but gave notice of withdrawal from the treaty on January 10, 2003, following US allegations that it had started an illegal enriched uranium weapons program, and the US subsequently stopping fuel oil shipments under the agreed framework which had resolved plutonium weapons issues in 1994. The withdrawal became effective April 10, 2003, making North Korea the first state ever to withdraw from the treaty. North Korea had once before announced withdrawal on March 12, 1993, but suspended that notice before it came into effect. On February 10, 2005, North Korea publicly declared that it possessed nuclear weapons and pulled out of the 6-party talks hosted by China to find a diplomatic solution to the issue. North Korea has been the only country that has actually withdrawn from the NPT. And we know that in the East, North Korea has been like a sore thumb. And every time something about nuclear weapons is mentioned, North Korea comes up. And we will see how YHWH will reveal how the nations of the East, including North Korea, will in the end fulfill a prophetic prophecy that is hidden in the book of Isaiah, and how from the second time that YHWH had shown signs to us in the heavens, he actually showed how the eastern nations will attack the United States of America, making use of nuclear weapons. This was what North Korea said during that time. We had already taken the resolute action of pulling out of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and have manufactured nuclear arms for self-defense to cope with the Bush administration's ever more undisguised policy to isolate and stifle the DPRK, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea. A North Korean foreign minister statement said regarding the issue. 6-party talks resumed in July 2005. We also see a picture of the different types of nuclear weapons that North Korea have developed, and also their capability to reach both the US as well as borders of Australia, India, Russia, and China, and Japan, of course. So these nuclear weapons that they have created have the ability to reach beyond 3,600 kilometers radius, up to a radius of the missiles which is now in development of 6,000 kilometers, reaching the United States of America. We see that North Korea is a great threat in the world, and also to the Western bloc of nations, because of its resistance and because of its refusal to be duped into believing that the United Nations truly desire peace. In a news bulletin on North Korea said it had successfully conducted a nuclear test on Monday, raising the explosive power and level of control of its nuclear device to a new level. Its state media said, "We have successfully conducted another nuclear test on May 25 as part of the Republic's measures to strengthen its nuclear deterrent." The North's official KCNA news agency said. South Korea's Yonhap news agency also quoted a ruling party official as saying that a test was conducted. U.S. Geographical Survey recorded unusual seismic activity near the site of North Korea's previous test in 2006, shortly before the NK, or the North Korean government's claims, saying that unusual earthquake activity was reported in North Korea's nuclear test area on Monday morning. The United States Geographical Survey reported. The agency said the earthquake, which happened at 9:55 a.m. local time, had a preliminary magnitude of 4.7. The timing is interesting as it comes a day after the suicide of South Korean ex-Prime Minister Roh Moo-hyun. So North Korea is not only making statements, they are actually doing it. We see a picture in the background of the specific area that they have tested their nuclear bomb in 2006. And we see that they now claim that they have raised their ability and level of control of the nuclear device to a new level. And if they say it, I think we can believe it. It means they are able to reach the United States very easily, able to reach China, Russia, and India, their neighboring countries. China is one of the United Nations Security Council permanent members, and China has possessed nuclear weapons, a range of ballistic missile capabilities, and the ability to develop chemical and biological weapons. A key uncertainty is how current military modernization efforts will ultimately reshape China's strategic nuclear capabilities. U.S. deployment of missile defenses are likely to be the key variable. Another key concept is the weaponization of space. Though China's officials have called for an international treaty to prevent the weaponization of space, China's ambitious space program and its January 2007 anti-satellite missile test has raised concerns about China's intention in space. Although China controls on the trade of sensitive weapons of mass destruction related materials, they have improved over the last decade, and concerns remain about China's proliferation of weapons of mass destruction related technologies. China's companies have in the past been sanctioned by the United States for sensitive exports to Iran. Although US sanctions have been on the decline since 2007, however, concerns remain about China's ability to control sensitive dual-use materials. China currently participates to some degree in all the multilateral regime dedicated to the non-proliferation of chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear weapons. China is party to the Treaty of the Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, the Chemical Weapons Convention, the Biological and Toxins Weapon Convention, and has signed the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty. Beijing has also joined the Nuclear Supplies Group and the Zanger Committee. China has applied for membership to the Missile Technology Control Regime. Although its membership remains blocked, China's controls lists are content with the Australia Group and the Wassenaar Arrangement. Beijing holds regular dialogue with representatives of these export control regimes. We can see that China is not fully trusted by the United Nations Security Council, and China has been doing its own thing. They have been developing different weapons on biological, chemical, as well as nuclear weapons. And they have also got the advantage of nobody knows really what China is developing. So we can also see that China has supplied Iran and other nations in the East with nuclear capability weapons and other weapons. And therefore China remains a problem to the United Nations Security Council. We've added some satellite images of China's submarine bases that could be seen on Google. And if you look at a new satellite image that appears to have captured a new ballistic missile submarine at the coordinates of 38 degrees 49 minutes and 4 seconds north and 121 degrees 29 minutes and 39 seconds east. So we can clearly see that China have been developing nuclear weapons, and they've got bases and they are fully supplied. The world does not know. What really is of interest here is also what Yeshua had shown us right in the beginning. And we will see at the end of the seminar how the submarines that China have used, even if they are old submarines, or maybe even there is a better and a newer technology, will be used to bring destruction to North Korea, destroying the Babylon of our time. We now come to the nation that is really a great concern in the world and have made statements like they want to wipe Israel off the map and from the face of the earth. And that is the nation of Iran. Iran is a party of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, but was found in non-compliance with its NPT safeguard agreements, and the status of its nuclear program remains in dispute. In November 2003, the IAEA Director General Mohammed al-Bardai reported that Iran had repeatedly and over an extended period failed to meet its safeguard obligations, including by failing to declare its uranium enrichment program. After about 2 years of uranium enrichment 3 led diplomatic efforts and Iran temporarily suspending its enrichment program, the IAEA Board of Governors acted under Article 12C of the IAEA Statute, found in a rare non-consensus decision with 12 abstentions, that these failures constituted non-compliance with the IAEA safeguard agreements. This was reported to the UN Security Council in 2006.
after which the Security Council passed a resolution demanding that Iran suspend its enrichment. Instead, Iran resumed its enrichment program.
Libya, that has recently been in the news, has signed and ratified the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty and was subjected to IAEA nuclear safeguard inspections, but undertook a secret nuclear weapons development program in violation of its NPT obligations, using material and technology provided by the AQ-CON Proliferation Network, including actual nuclear weapons designs allegedly originating in China. Libya began secret negotiations with the United States and the United Kingdom in March 2003 over potentially eliminating its weapons of mass destruction programs. In October 2003, Libya was embarrassed by the interdiction of the shipment of Pakistani-designed centrifuge parts sent from Malaysia, also a part of AQ-CON's proliferation ring. In December 2003, Libya announced that it had agreed to eliminate all its weapons of mass destruction programs and permitted the US and the British teams into the country to assist this process and verify its completion. We can see that Libya has tried to manufacture some nuclear weapons, but finally decided to give in and not to oppose the United Nations Security Council, and especially the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. The nuclear weapons design, gas centrifuge for uranium enrichment, and other equipment, including prototypes for improved Scud ballistic missiles, were removed from Libya by the United States. Libyan chemical weapon stocks and chemical bombs were also destroyed on site with international verification, with Libya joining the Chemical Weapons Convention. Libya's non-compliance with its IAEA safeguards was reported to the UN Security Council, but with no action taken, as Libya's return to compliance with safeguards and Article 2 of the NPT was welcomed. So we see that the United Nations, through the United States of America, and also the United Nations Security Council, came into Libya, and just like South Africa earlier gave up their nuclear weapons, Libya also gave up their weapons of mass destruction.